Hey Rebels, my name is Matthew Barton. Welcome to the Rebellion Brewing Podcast. Welcome to a new year filled with new beers. Today I'm joined by Rebellion's very own greasy sales guy, an award-winning homebrewer and modern renaissance man, Paul Chicoine. This episode, we're going to be talking about bold predictions about the Sask craft beer scene and sharing our unscientific opinions about what's coming up in 2022. So let's get into it. Paul, welcome to the show.
Thanks for having me on today. That intro was very interesting. That's pretty awesome.
How you handling the cold?
I don't like the cold, but you know what I feel is when I go outside and I burn, you know, it's just part of what we do. I really appreciate those warm days right now. Yeah.
I'm still frozen. I spent New Year's under a blanket.
Well, hopefully with someone to help keep you warm.
When I was thinking about this episode, I wanted to say, let's make bold, wild predictions about 2022. Let's be accurate, and a year from now, come back and say, were we right? And gloat if we were, and laugh if we were wrong. But sometimes predicting the future means looking back at the past. And so while it's still fresh in our minds, let's talk a little bit about 2021. What beers were you digging last year?
It's going to seem absurd. My beer that I drank the most of last year was the Cerveza. I just kind of got into it. It was easy for me, and that and our brand beer was like they're the top two in all the beers that I was like drinking in any volumes.
For myself, I would say Black IPA was probably my number one that I like dug on. I was like, oh, this is amazing. This is great. But I checked my Untappd check-ins, and beer was my number one check-in.
I should be checking in my beers more often. The Black IPA I thought was fabulous. The best thing about that beer to me was that it was a complete surprise. And as much as we talked about it internally, when I took one out of the fridge and I'm like, I'm just going to try this out, it was always lights out.
It held up. What beers surprised you last year?
The beers that surprised me the most, and one was no surprise. We talk about it, but every time I try an amber, it surprises me of just how delicious it is. I get that malty and that caramel and the hops. Everything was great about it. That was surprising. Because it kind of reinvents itself every time I try one. It's not one that I think about drinking all the time. Some of our solo crushes were, everyone was different and everyone was surprising. But our hazy, it's surprising that we don't put any fruit juice in. And that one really blew my socks off.
I was talking to a couple beer guys, and they accused us of maybe sneaking in some orange juice into the hazy, and I said no.
Not at all. Those hops, the magic our brewers do with those hops brings out so much flavor and frankly just juiciness that that beer is extremely surprising, and it is right for the style. But when you kind of go backwards and like that's not what I was expecting when you try it, that's what kind of really I dig on.
One of the things that I was also thinking about was this time last year in 2021, we were still kind of in the middle of restrictions. We could do takeout from the tap room, and our tap room was actually empty of chairs and tables. You guys had taken them all out and filled it with kegs so we could save money on keg storage. And all that work that's gone into rebuilding the tap room, bringing back those tables and chairs and doing all that stuff. You were really active behind the scenes.
Yeah, I kind of helped facilitate a lot of that, I guess. we brought in the right players for all of us to be successful. We redid and modernized, I guess, all the hardwood and stuff like that. And I guess looking back over the 12 months, right now it's tough for me to look back 2 weeks. But we're looking at some of our wins, and some of them are the wins that people may not see every day. We brought in one good guy, and him and I work closely together to make sure the tables look great and just work on our fit and finish. And it was something that we've kind of let go for a few years, and I'm glad that some people are noticing it, because I didn't realize how a commercial space, how used it gets, and how we got to keep up with that, that look.
We're talking about Greg here. Greg, one of our new guys. Not so new now. He's been with us for a few months, but he's a carpenter by trade. He's driving truck, but he's also kind of just figuring everything out and like fixing stuff, and he's really good with wood. And this is something that I didn't understand at first, but the chemical we were using when we were sanitizing all extra for COVID, what was it doing to our tables? It was like stripping them or something?
Yeah, it was stripping them and making the we didn't necessarily understand that first chemical that was helping sanitize, and it was basically turning all the varnish into gum. And it did that with all everything people touched, right? So we brought Greg in. I guess he would have started, I'm thinking, beginning of June. And I've known Greg for a couple of years, about 30 years or so. Him and I grew up together. And, carpenter by trade, scaffolder, Red Seal, and farmer, and grows wheat and canola and stuff. But what I've always liked about Greg is that he's really good at millwork. And he was able to kind of help us with our maintenance, stuff like that, and in the brewery, and help us with our tables and our chairs, and just a lot of the day-to-day things that kind of I run out of time to do myself.
He hung the sound panels in this room that we're recording in, and it made a huge difference.
Hello. I guess, yeah, kind of, that's cool. He helped renovate the office as well, so, I mean, that's awesome, right?
I can't say enough nice things about Greg. He's been a really great addition to the team, and I like what he brings to the table. Like he fills in an essential skill set that I didn't know we were missing until you see the difference he makes.
Yeah, absolutely. It was something that I've thought about, and we've talked about it in some ways, but not necessarily something that everybody was listening to. And whether it was him or, maybe somebody else, but really the people we attract, or the people we really want, people need to have multiple skill sets, because you're not pigeonholed into just being a delivery guy or doing this, but how many other ways can we kind of best use your skills that you bring to the table? And Greg absolutely fills checks all those boxes.
One of the things I wanted to bug you about that I thought would be valuable for our audience that you could offer a special insight into is cans, aluminum cans. How crazy it's been the entire pandemic, from starting late 2020 till now. Just the situation we're in. Can you give me like a brief overview of the last 18 months of cans?
So going back, and we'll say even going back 2.5 years, we kind of set a mandate to try to lower our costs down. We've always said that we don't have to make more money by raising prices all the time. We can actually make money by saving money. Aluminum cans was our single biggest, at that time, it was one of our single biggest points that we could try to get some cost savings on. So we looked at buying cans from Mexico, and we tried that. And it went well for a couple loads of cans, but the manufacturing facility ultimately started jacking up their prices because of supply and demand issues. So we ended up going back and getting our cans, sourcing them out of Canada again, and the price was very reasonable. But, with the craft beer industry that we're in, and what was once bottles is now cans. And that supply and demand issue is going straight up. And in the last year, the last 6 months, what we've noticed, and I do tell people whenever they want to lend me their ear, is, our can price has gone up 30%, which is a pretty big jump. But in the last month and a half, something that we didn't really calculate on was our shipping rates have gone up 300%. What a truck that I used to pay $2,500 for is now $10,000 to go from Vancouver to Regina, and that's toll rates, and that's a lot of things that we have to calculate to our finished product. And as strong as we are, it's a testament to our industry of who's going to be able to survive some of these new costs that come along with it. The can itself, and we look at how many people are buying them and on what quantities. We're pretty lucky, being that we buy 1 or 2 truckloads every month or every other month. I don't want to be in a place where we're buying half a truckload and the cost is the same as a full, but we don't have the place to keep it, and we don't have those other economic strengths that won't allow us, because our volume right now is what's helping us keep our costs down.
To give some context to the audience, what's happening is consumers aren't coming out to tap rooms and restaurants the way they did pre-pandemic.
Absolutely.
What's happening is they're taking product to go, they're going to the liquor store and taking it home to enjoy. Everybody at the exact same time as soda manufacturers, other brewers, seltzer companies, everybody needed to shift to a different kind of packaging,
a different format, and
from kegs and draft.
We were looking at, and you think about 7 years ago or 6 years ago, 5 years ago, when we were still into growlers and doing that game, that's transitioned to the craft breweries and local distributors, more than anything, local guys being able to buy cans now, or getting into small canning lines. That changed the game for everybody, because now it becomes more supply and demand issue. When we started, out of the 3 that started the same year with Blackbridge, Nokomis, and us, we were the only ones not canning at that time necessarily. And then when we do have Pile of Bones came online, and some of the other guys got a little bit more popular, even multinational, doing what they do with the amount of cans they're sending out, that changed the whole game for the breweries in our province, because we went from less than a handful of manufacturers using cans to 20 manufacturers all using cans. And that's just our little world in Saskatchewan, never mind what's going on in Calgary or Alberta, or into BC. So it's crazy, really.
Huge demand increase for cans, coupled with disruptions to supply lines. You can't get truckers to move the trucks. You can't get them to pull the trailers out of dock.
No, they you got those problems. You got cans that are sitting on ships that we can't get on land. You got can producers in the United States that were bought up by Coke, bought their entire year's supply. Then we've got natural disasters where you can't physically get a truck across a mountain range. So
because the mountain's on fire, or then the mountain's
or
flooding.
Yeah, exactly.
It's kind of like a 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 punch, and everybody's trying to duck and dodge and not take a brick to the head.
Exactly. And unfortunately, at the end of the day, we don't try to pass on every dime to our consumer. That's not our game. We try to be very calculated on our pricing models, and we know that the shipping costs will come down, but we don't know if the aluminum cost will come down. If the demand is this high, it might stay like that for a long time. maybe growlers might become a thing again. Maybe, our hardcore fans that are out there with growlers, that might be a thing. They might split their the volumes of beer they buy between growlers for the really wacky stuff from the tap room, and then buy the cans for when they need to go out to the beach and stuff like that. So
I often try to explain to people when they say to me, "Oh man, beer's kind of getting expensive." I said, "You're paying for the packaging. The beer costs less than the packaging, the plastic snap tops, the labels, the cans, all the flats, the cardboard pieces. That's what you're paying for when you're paying for the beer."
And everything comes on a truck, and unfortunately there's as much packaging. We try to minimize that packaging because that's always been our MO. But the easiest way to move beer is or cans of beers in a tray. So we need a cardboard tray for that. We need some sort of format to hold the cans together. So we use a PackTech piece to hold 4 beers together. But on that note, just sidebar on that, we have been able to, I found a company that we're able to recycle those. So we are accepting those in our tap room, so we can send them back to the manufacturer and get them remade into 4-pack holders. But
we've been getting a lot of questions about recycling those 4-pack toppers.
Yeah, and they've been going on for years, and we haven't really been able to, and our city hasn't been able to, and Sarcan hasn't been able to find the right avenue. But through some research, I've been able to kind of, and I'm working with Sobeys and Sarcan on a little bit of a pilot project. We're basically going to fill up a tote, and there's going to be no money given back to the customer or anything, but we are able to send them back, and Sarcan's doing that on their dime to the manufacturer, and which they're going to turn them back into pellets so they can make new 4-pack holders.
I know that we get questions a lot about sustainable packaging, biodegradable packaging, and I know you've been really kind of banging your head on the wall, making phone calls, emails, contacts, trying to figure this stuff out. And we're not talking pennies per pack. We're talking dollars per pack to upgrade to those next level, like bamboo, biodegradable pieces. Like those aren't quite there yet.
No, that industry, when we go to the trade shows and stuff like that, everyone tries to do the big sale on us. And in our heart of hearts, we know that it's probably a better way to go. But at 10 to up to 100 times cost, that's one thing. We don't want to pass that on. But more than anything, and a lot of people maybe don't realize this, is in Saskatchewan, we get 40 degrees above and 40 degrees below. And when the weather is warm and we take our product, which we always store cold in our cold storage area, and we move that product, often the biodegradable starts to biodegrade as the beer's in transit through condensation and stuff like that. Even our cardboard trays get soft at times. So some of that actually just doesn't work for our environment. If we stored the beer all warm and we canned it warm and we did a bunch of stuff like that, maybe we could get it to last longer. But even when, and this is what would really break my heart, is if you go from taking the beer out of a customer's cold cooler and then taking it out to the car, and as it softens up with moisture, your cans fall and hit the ground, that would be like the worst thing that could happen. So the technology's just not there yet.
But we're keeping an eye on it.
Always. We're always looking for different avenues to just be better.
Let's circle back to big beer predictions for 2022. What do you think will be the top 3 beer styles for 2022 in Saskatchewan?
I think the number one beer style going forward is again, I think it's going to be the fruit sours, which has its own problems.
Really? You think fruit sours?
I do think fruit sours. I think that we haven't gotten over that hump yet, but I don't think everyone understands that we've had a lot of crop shortages So when they see breweries coming out with all the same beer or all the same fruit beer, they're going to understand that that was the fruit that was affordable to buy. But that's not going to be my beer. I do think hazy is going to be number 2. I think the terminology might change, and I think a lot of breweries are just going to start using hazy yeast in their IPAs or even their pale ales.
Why?
I think that out here, I think it's just going to, in order for some breweries to streamline their manufacturing, instead of carrying different yeast strains, making a pale ale using a hazy yeast or a hybrid, or even the IPAs using a hazy yeast rather than a standard yeast. I think it's just more sexy to see that hazy can than it is a clear can for IPAs.
So you think that the aesthetics of a hazy beer are going to rise up
absolutely
in
yeah.
enjoyment?
I do think that, but that's not going to be my beer either. No, my beer, and believe it or not, I think that Cerveza is going to take off, but again, because last year it did really good for us. But I think our beer is going to go far and wide, and it is that beer I can take anywhere. People know what it is. It's not goofy. It says everything all about it is right on the can. It's beer. And I think that for a lot of regular people, or for, the most experienced drinker, that's something that's always going to be in their tackle box, or it's always going to be in their fridge, wherever they go. That's the one. And they're going to save all the really cool, wacky stuff for hanging around, the pass around, the beers around the campfire type thing. That's what that's going to be. But I think that our beer is going to go across the province, and it's just going to go crazy this year. That's my big prediction for beer, is because of our crop shortages and looking at our different issues that we had in the past year. I think that you're going to see more breweries go into a basic pale ale or a lager, probably a lager style beer, clear 4.5 to 5.5%, just something that's really functional over products that have a lot of adjuncts or putting fruit in every single beer that comes down the line. So, as much as I think that the most popular beers, but they're going to be hard to come by, are going to be sours. Hazy, every brewery's going to do one, but everybody's going to want one. And then I think the underdog, the Mighty Mouse of the situation is a lager, but our brand beer.
I dig it. I don't agree with you 100% though.
Oh.
I wanted to kind of poke a bit and say I think consumers have not yet adjusted to what's happened with barley and fruit and crops. I think they're still going to be running into the direction that they were going last year, which is headlong into IPAs.
I think that I guess I've been drinking IPAs for 20 years, and that on its own that's normal, I guess, for beer geeks and that type of thing. With me, it's run its course, and I'm a one and done IPA guy, and then I'll go back to something else. But I do think for the general public, and that's why I said sours, because it's easy to bring sours home and everybody in the house is going to enjoy that. And then IPAs is yours. Okay, it's yours. And whether that's Mama ain't going to let Papa drink her IPAs, or it's going to be hidden away that nobody's going to share those. But I do think every brewery is going to come out with a hazy-esque or multiple IPA-style beers. And every brewery is not going to have one. They'll probably have 3.
Yeah, I would agree with that. Yeah. I do think there's a huge desire for the big, juicy, hazy IPAs. I also think that there's lots of room for a more traditional IPA and even a session IPA. Something that's not going to get you wasted, that you can keep drinking over a longer session. But I just think there's a huge demand, unmet demand, for a boozy, big bold IPA that has lots of flavor. And I'm not talking like enamel scraping necessarily. There is that like small sliver of people who just want that punch in the mouth. But I'm talking about people who love that juice.
Yeah, well, I think that's changed. What one trend we saw when I was in a home brewer years ago was it was going from making just pale ales to IPAs, and then it became a race. And what we've seen, especially on the American craft beer side, and the home brewers followed this trend, was the beers started getting bigger and bigger and bigger, and with the IPAs. And I don't think that as much as people are wanting it, we don't know what a traditional IPA is anymore. I really don't. If you want a traditional IPA or a really nice West Coast IPA, our Zilla, I hang our hat on that one all day long. But what I think people are doing, and where the immaturity in our market is that people are still chasing the newest one. We could launch a different IPA brand once a month and do very well with it, but trying to get legs underneath that brand is really tough. But I think a lot of breweries do it as well. We made our Solo Crush series, which was successful, but kind of misunderstood in some ways. They're all basic pale ales and light IPAs. Our Golden Crush, which complete, it really destroyed the market in the summer months, is a really good, I call it a pale ale, but some people would call it a lighter IPA, and we use our hazy yeast in that now, and that's where I go back to what those hybrid beers are like. So we'll call that 2 different styles, and then plus our hazy, which is 3, and our Zilla, which is 4. And I don't think we've even kind of opened the can of worms that we could really come out with if we really want to hit IPAs. But I think there's a lot of other breweries out there that are coming out with a lot of different products as well. And that's where the consumers are. I mean, to be a consumer right now, to go into a liquor store, the world's your oyster. You've got a lot of choices. And if you wait long enough, you're going to get even more. So I think that's really cool.
Where I do agree with you is second place, I think, is going to be fruit sours. I think IPAs are going to be number 1, but number 2, fruit sours, because it's novel, it's new, it's always something great to check out. It's like, oh, it's that brand new fruit, and it's only here for a limited period of time. And I don't know that people want a sour, like jaw clenching kind of like Foder or Belgian kind of.
No, we're not ready for that stuff yet.
They're like in that sweet,
we like it,
milky.
Absolutely. I think our sours here are more on they're good sour beers, but the people, or even myself, they're similar to a seltzer in some ways, that they're very approachable. What I think, and what I've always asked our brewers to do, is make beers that have enough flavor that you recognize it, but not so much flavor that it stays with you for the rest of the night. You want to drink it and forget about it and make yourself want another one. And so sours, in my opinion, or fruit beers in general, that's the flavor profile I look for. Why I put them at number 1 rather than number 2 was because they are limited numbers. Because they are, if you see it, you buy it, because you might not get another chance to buy it. And producers, their numbers are going to show really low. But if they actually showed the window of time versus their sales for that window, they would be very impressed with selling out a batch of beer and the retailer selling out that batch of beer again, like that fast. So that's where I go with the sours, or fruit beer, I should say sours, because it's not all fruit beer are sours, and not all sours are fruit beers, right? So that's a whole thing on its own. It's a whole thing on its own.
For my big 3, my number 3, you got ahead of me on it. You kind of called out what I was going to say. I was going to classify the Golden Crush White IPA from Pile of Bones as kind of like the number 3 of the big. That's where people are going. That's what they want. Because we said Golden Crush is a hazy pale ale, and you look at not Black Bones, Pile of Bones. You look at Pile of Bones White IPA, and you drink it side by side with other more traditional West Coast style IPAs, and it's very much it's easier to drink, it's lighter, it's less aggressive, it doesn't like punch you in the mouth, but it's got flavor, and it's a nice gateway.
Absolutely.
And I think the kind of people who want Golden Crush and want White IPA are sustainable, and they love it. And as soon as long weekend hits in the waning end of spring, beginning of summer, they just want it, and I think it's just going to take flight.
And that's basically it. A lot of my friends do like the Pile of Bones White IPA. They really dig on it. It's very approachable. I'm very grateful for Pile of Bones coming out with that White IPA because it is a gateway beer. It's a gateway for people to make themselves feel cool about drinking craft or local or craft local or small batch, whatever makes them sleep at night. But after a few of those, or after buying it for, some time, they'll gateway into wanting to try other stuff. Our Amber was that way. Our Blonde was that way back in the old days. Our Belgian Wit was that way. Sometimes it's a gateway into the brand, and sometimes it's a gateway into craft beer itself. I look at our beer, and it's the same thing. You buy beer for buying Rebellion. I do like the beer itself, but it's not complicated, right? It's easier to get it into the hands of somebody that you have to get them keened into a different idea. It's not about craft beer at that point. It's about a local company or, a community-driven, brewery rather than, a craft beer, because some people that doesn't resonate. And that's okay, right? But with the Pile of Bones White IPA, I asked a lot of my friends, why do you have that in your fridge over, any other beer? And they're like, it's got flavor, but it doesn't mess me up. And I'm like, you have enough of them, you'll get messed up. And they're like, true. And I'm like, that's okay, right? But hey, like I say, if anybody likes any brands that gets them kind of interested in the hobby or into a craft beer or, like I said, community breweries or local producers, that's all that matters. That's what we want. That's what grows our industry.
I'm going to date myself here by talking about this, but you'll remember when Shock Top first hit the market and it had the mohawk and that orange slice, and the marketing was really dialed into that younger demo that wanted something that was a little bit different, off the beaten path. And the big guys, I think they really nailed that as a launch.
Yeah.
It hit that flavor profile, hit that demo,
Yeah.
hit that group of people. And it turned on a lot of young guys, and maybe women too, into saying, this is something new, different, and outside the wheelhouse. It's not my dad's beer.
Absolutely. So the first time I saw Shock Top, I was walking down the strip in Las Vegas, and there was a Mini Cooper that drove by with the mohawk, and it was dressed up as a Shock Top sales vehicle or a PR vehicle. And I saw it, I noticed it, never really put a lot into it until I got to a bar, and then I seen this bright orange beer in a clear cup. And I'm like, oh, and it's foggy. It's foggy, and they're trying to go after that Belgian Wit style. I get it, but the really interesting part is that the color keyed it in, because it makes you feel like you're drinking something crafty, right? And it doesn't drink really heavy, so you can have multiples, and it drinks almost light, and it was very interesting to me. Did I have one? Yes. Was I happy with it? Not exactly. But what it also did was Shock Top then kicked the door open for Kronenberg 1664 to come in, and that's a old brand, and they've been around a long time. It's just they didn't get the legs underneath them. Shock Top and AB kind of helped that out, And then Kronenberg came in, and then all of a sudden you can be really cool by drinking this import Belgian wit. And then there's guys like me that were drinking Hoegaarden the whole time, but people were like, what's that? And I'm like, well, this is the original. The original. So
The reason I brought up Shock Top is because I had friends back in the day who were like, oh, yeah, Shock Top, something new, something different, and they thought it was craft. They kind of got snookered into the whole crafty-ish feeling of it. But what happened then within the next couple of years was they came back to me and they said, I can't go back to that. I've tried all this other local craft. Like, it opened the doors, it opened their eyes to possibility.
It's a gateway.
They sampled everything else. They came back to Shock Top. That old, the one they recalled or remembered of it had changed completely. And they said, I can't drink that anymore.
Right. The big thing to me was the first time you try it, it's drinkable, and the color. And that's what popped. And they did a great job at that, and they did a great job at marketing, which was fabulous. When we started making beer, we came out with our Belgian Wit, which is our first beer we went into sell outside of the brewery. And, right away, its competitors were Kronenberg 1664 and Shock Top. Now, the difference was that there's only so much room for those Belgian Wit styles. Shock Top kind of was run its course by then, and which gave us a little bit of wiggle room to sneak onto some of the draft taps and just to be different. And frankly, the customers that were used to Shock Top, they were kind of split. They want to try something local and new, but the style was close enough that they still thought that it was Shock Top-esque. So that's kind of interesting.
I've had a friend in the last year come to me and say, oh, man, I can't drink Cat's Got the Cream anymore because I drank Mega Laser Cat. He says, I'm going to have to hoard Mega Laser Cat for the whole year long. And he loves Cat's Got the Cream.
Well,
Mega Laser Cat blew his mind.
Well, that's absolutely it. Now, Mega Laser Cat was not my cup of tea, so to speak. It wasn't my beer. Just because it was too much. It was just too big for what I'm used to. Small doses. The Cat's Got the Cream Ale it's a better dessert beer for me. So I really get that understanding that, hey, when you go to the imperial levels, if you go to the end, the regular stuff just doesn't cut it anymore. And that's where I go back to when we're in our home brewing. That's basically what it was. You'd make a really, really good pale ale, and then you'd put it side by side with somebody that made an imperial IPA, and you're like, well, that doesn't even matter. When really what I'm looking for is a beer that's clean, a beer that won't make me sick, a beer that I can have multiples of or enjoy with my friends. That's basically what I want.
You just said something that keyed me into my next part of my question was, do you think seltzers are over? People were chasing that low-cal, light, easy drinking, not a lot of flavor, but you could give her multiple times and you feel like you're not getting full up.
I think the seltzer market will be solid again this year. I don't know if they'll experience growth. I think that it'll weed out the small manufacturers, the people that aren't doing a great job marketing. But what I do believe is that there's a market for it, and that market, they know what they want, and they want something that's thin, that's a little bit of alcohol, something they can drink and they'll feel good about, not having a bunch of calories and whatever the key words are in that seltzer game. But I think that what's going to happen is on the retail side, the retailers are going to find their 2 or 3 favorite brands, and they're going to start taking away some of the footprint of the overall market. So it won't necessarily grow and it won't shrink, but it will kind of get more isolated into just a few brands that are doing it well.
I was thinking about Mike's Hard Lemonade. when I was coming out of high school and moving into university, and Mike's Hard was like massive. Mondo, huge advertising campaigns, TV, radio, everywhere. You couldn't escape it. And now you don't hear about it at all. I rarely see it. And last year felt like the rise of the seltzer. You couldn't escape it. Print, social
Right.
media, it was just boom in your face. And my big bold prediction is seltzer's going to have a harder landing than people expect.
Hey, I've noticed every other year, it's almost on a 2-year cycle. There's a thing that everyone grabs onto. The Pink Whitney, Mike's Hard, apple flavored beer, lime beer, whatever it is. It's always there's always something goofy along the way. And I remember that first summer that we were building the brewery, and I was going out and getting some of our licenses at the city of Regina, and the ladies in the office asked me if we were going to make something like Krabbies, because they're all drinking Krabbies, and I remember you couldn't get that Krabbies anywhere, and I'm like, no, we're not gonna do that, but I'll keep it in mind. We'll put that in our back pocket, and you wait long enough, and it goes away. Seltzers, I disagree with you just a little bit. I do think that they're gonna fall on their bum.
But not next year. Not in 2022.
Not in 2022. Not the way we think it will. I think their numbers will kind of level off and go down. But, I see that person, maybe the individual buying a little bit less. I want to see them buy more beer, but, there's a lot of stuff out there. We haven't got into, the different wines to go or some, the alcohol market in general, the alcohol market in general has shifted and changed. That hard market is all over the place, and no, Mike's Hard isn't what it definitely was, 15 years ago or more. But that being said, I'm waiting for that rise or something to come back in just a different way. There's a different. I'm waiting for the language to change just a little bit on it.
The language on which? On what consumers will be chasing?
Yeah, the market, and maybe even just the marketing. The marketing on Mike's Hard itself, and just talk about that. It goes back to more traditional hard lemonade or lemonade or ciders, like that type of thing. More traditional rather than the seltzer itself. But there's a lot of money to be made in seltzers. There's very little ingredients. They've got some packaging. There's a few drops of alcohol and, a little bit of artificial flavor. I'm not going to knock it. I don't drink them, but I would rather make, a 4-liter batch of gin and tonics for myself rather than make seltzers. I think it's simple to do on your own.
I'm not going to knock anyone who's figuring out how to turn it into money. We had a government guy say to us, you guys at Rebellion should get into the seltzer game. They're turning nickels into dollars. And we said, no, we're turning Saskatchewan crops into the highest quality beer you can get. And then we win a bunch of gold medals. No offense to the seltzer guys. I don't remember them making any gold medal wins.
Well, the seltzer guys I would hate to convert a production facility into seltzer and in 2 years not know what to do with my production facility because I can't sell my product anymore. Right? That's where I go with it. There isn't a lot of people. It doesn't intake a lot of people into their system. I don't even know anymore, and I would put a number on 30 or 40, maybe 50 people that we touch in some way financially within our province. Whereas the seltzer market, it doesn't run that deep. You know what I mean? Going all the way down to the farmer that grows malt. Just because that seltzer, they do take Saskatchewan, grain and turn it into, neutral grain spirit. But there's not a lot of craft. There's no craft there. There's very little, effort that goes into that.
I think when we take the hops, we take the maltster and we talk to them on a one-on-one basis and we're saying we're looking for this kind of profile and these ingredients to create these kinds of things. There's more intention to it. Whereas you just take a tote of Nutri-Grain spirits and you add some flavoring, it's not the same.
Absolutely. And the people's motives just that kind of in that market, it is about dollars. It's not about how far the dollar goes or how many times can we pass the dollar through hands in Saskatchewan, right? That's not what it's about. And frankly, we don't have a lot of seltzer producers in Saskatchewan. I know of a couple. We have more people that are trying to make a table-friendly mead or a sparkling mead that can be in a single serve. We've got more people that are doing more fruit-based, wine in cans or different products like that. It seems like it's a big guy's game to make money at seltzers, and if you like spending your money and watching it funnel as fast as it can out of the province, that's one way to do it. That's for sure.
I guess I should couch all of this. I could just hear my wife in the back of my head going, "You fucking asshole."
I don't know.
Because she loves seltzers.
Well,
her friends love seltzers, and
you,
I can't blame them. There's a time and a place for them. Every time I've tasted them, it's like drinking static, and I fucking hate it.
Well,
it makes me angry. But I'm also I'm biased. I'm into craft beer.
But it's fine. I love hard alcohol too, and it's really easy for me to buy a bottle of Last Mountain vodka and make my own. It's really easy for me to, get some sparkling water, which we make, and add 3 slices of lime and a few ounces of Black Fox's gin and make my own. And no, it's not in a can. It's not ready to go, but that's not the way that I enjoy that. I think there is alternative ways. And one thing I'd like to see come back is just the cocktail game itself. And people get into making cocktails. And, once we were able to visit again, and once the weather warms up and we're able to sit out on our patios, just, buying ingredients for everybody to develop their own cocktails and make them as strong or as weak as you want, kind of changes that matter. But if you're on the back of the boat, I'll be honest, having some of those seltzers and a couple light beers, that's kind of the easiest thing to do, right? It's all about convenience at that point.
The moment you said cocktails, my mind immediately goes to the guys at Avenue, who kind of are the current tip of the spear. They understand the theater of it. They do a lot of cocktail social media pornography where they're showing off the gimlets and the spritzes and the slow-mo shots and the real sexy pours, and they really celebrate the whole, I don't want to say artifice, the art of creating a cocktail. I think that's interesting that you've highlighted that.
I'm into that. I enjoy that, and it can be simple or it can be complicated, and I think that when you enjoy it's cooking at home. It's like barbecue. It's like any of that stuff. Sometimes you put a little bit of work in, you enjoy it a little bit more. But it also goes back to, I understand how to make beer. I understand how to make good beer. It's not easy. Not everyone can do it well. And when I look at, the convenience of a seltzer, that's where it ends. And that's where the personality kind of ends. That's where the sexiness ends. That's where everything ends, because there is none. It's all about convenience. And I'm not saying it's the worst thing in the world, which it's not, because we have them in our fridge at home. But I like putting a little bit more energy into it, or my mind. I can sleep at night, knowing that. I know the people that put their energy into making this vodka or this spirit or, whatever it is, right?
What you just said to me was there's a difference between a cookie that comes from a big manufacturer, slotted into trays, it's been sitting on shelves for months, and my wife's fresh, ooey gooey chocolate chip homemade cookies that are just made with love and
Absolutely.
The flavor and everything.
Yeah, when you go into a bakery and you grab 1 or 2 cookies off the shelf out of their cookie jar versus, the big brand in the white tray and the bag and the 4 layers of packaging that's on top of it, well, that kind of sums it all up, you know what I mean? So
big hairy prediction for beer in 2022.
Beer brand is going to take off for Rebellion. I think that more breweries are going to come online with a really good lager pilsner. I think because of economics and how the world is half fucked right now, I do think that breweries are going to do this. I want them to do it, maybe more so than they will, but maybe I want them to. And I think that it's because that's really going to tell what breweries are awesome and which ones are, more average. Guys that can do a really awesome regular beer.
Because it's harder to brew.
It's way harder. You're walking around naked all the time. Everyone sees everything that you are. Rather than, you can always mask it with a beer with adjuncts. So, it might not sound like a big, huge, hairy, nutsy prediction, but just letting breweries do that, come out with something that's really clean, and, watching it move up people's or breweries' lineups into their flagship position, that's actually what I'd love to see happen.
Nice. For my big hairy prediction, and this is going to be a real kind of a downer note at the end of the podcast, I think it's going to be really, really shitty with Omicron and this 4th, 5th wave that's kind of taken off right now. The numbers are vertical. I think it's going to be a crappy winter and a shaky spring. And we're not going to feel really good until the weather warms up and summer hits. And then I think this is my bold prediction on the positive side. I think it's going to be a lights out summer because everybody has dealt with all this crap and they're just ready to go. They're over it. They're sick of masks. They're sick of all this crap. They're going to say it's time to move on. And I suspect by then, if we don't see, and knock on wood, we don't see another variant emerge that's more pathogenic or lethal, what that means is restaurants are going to be open, festivals, all the things that make summer and beer great are going to be there, and it's going to be like a vertical climb. Boom. It's just going to take off for us. I think it's going to be a lights out summer.
I hope so. I hope so.
Well, Paul, thank you for your time today.
Okay, thank you for having me. It was awesome.
Rebels, thanks for listening today. If you have any questions or comments about this episode, be sure to join us on our brand new Facebook group page, the Rebellion Brewing Podcast. I'm also proud to let you know we're members of the Saskatchewan Podcast Network. It's a one-stop shop for tons of locally produced shows from across our province. You can find them at saskpodcastnetwork.com. Be sure to follow us on Facebook, Instagram, and Untappd so you don't miss out on the latest in Sask craft beer news. Thank you for joining the Rebellion.